Hey guys, tonight we're diving deep into something a little steamier than a medieval bathhouse, but somehow just as uncomfortable. The regulation of prostitution in early 1900s America. This was a time when brothels had better customer service than most modern tech companies, but also when moral crusaders were declaring war on ankles and jazz music. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of absurdity. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Because somehow, it's always 3:12 a.m. when this kind of topic starts making sense. Now, dim the lights, turn on a fan for that soft ambient whoosh of modernity, tuck yourself in, and maybe lock the door just in case a Temperance League member tries to burst in and confiscate your bedroom slippers for being too suggestive. Let's pause for a moment. Have you ever wondered what life was like as a working girl in 1900s America? Did brothels really have customer loyalty punch cards? Did the cops actually raid the places, or just visit them for free inspections? What happened when the government tried to legislate morality, and how did that go? Spoiler: terribly. What did prohibition have to do with panty raids, and why were there suddenly a lot of very concerned men holding clipboards? And now, congratulations. You've just woken up in 1907 in a creaky boarding house above a saloon in Street Louis. Outside, the gas lights flicker, the piano downstairs is slightly out of tune, and your boss just told you to powder your nose, tighten your corset, and for heaven's sake, smile at the mayor. Welcome to the world's oldest profession, now with paperwork. It's 11:42 p.m. and the street is humming. Gaslights flicker, laughter spills out of swinging saloon doors, and you just stepped in something that might be beer, might be worse. Welcome to the red light district, where every window has lace curtains and every curtain hides an entrepreneurial disaster in progress. You're walking down Commercial Street, or maybe Basin Street, or Storyville if you're in New Orleans, or the Tenderloin if you're in San Francisco. Doesn't matter. The name changes, but the smell is consistent. A complicated cocktail of cheap perfume, horses, whiskey, cigar smoke, and something else you're not sure has a name yet but is probably sentient. Above you, second-story windows glow with soft yellow light, occasionally flickering with shadowy silhouettes. Some are laughing, some are arguing, and one of them is definitely throwing a shoe. Welcome to the after-hours economy, where the real commerce begins when the respectable businesses go to sleep and the real professionals go to work, in heels that hurt and skirts that lie. There's music, always music. A piano plinks from the saloon on the corner, played by a man who hasn't seen sunlight in 6 years and is probably named something like Whiskey Pete. He knows 3 songs. He plays them all at the same time. Outside, a brass band lurches past, full of drunken energy, and at least one guy playing the trombone like it owes him money. You pass a man vomiting delicately into a street grate. He doffs his hat politely at you as he retches. Because manners matter, a group of gentlemen in bowlers stumble out of a gambling hall arguing loudly about a horse, a debt, and a woman named Violet. No one wins the argument. Violet probably did. The cobblestones are slick with rain, spilled gin, and questionable life choices. You sidestep a puddle only to realize it's moving. Don't ask. Inside the brothels, because yes, they're everywhere, you'll find an entire ecosystem of economy and illusion. Parlor rooms with velvet furniture nobody can afford. Wallpaper with patterns that seem to move if you've had too much absinthe. And chandeliers that are more ambition than structural integrity. The madam sits in a high-backed chair near the fireplace like a sleepy godfather, keeping one eye on the front door and the other on a girl trying to upsell a man with a handlebar moustache and the moral compass of a tipped cow. You don't knock in these places. You drift. The doors are open to those with cash, charm, or connections. Sometimes all three. Usually just one. This isn't chaos. This is choreography. Everyone has a role. The bartender, the bouncer, the seamstress fixing a ripped stocking in the corner, the tired girl pretending not to listen, while a man monologues about his wife not understanding him, again. And you? You're just trying to survive the night without stepping on a rat or running into a local alderman who insists this district is a moral disgrace but somehow knows everyone's name. The red light district is alive. Not just with bodies, but with strategy. It never sleeps, never apologizes, and never forgets to collect the rent. It's the part of town where the rules of daylight don't apply, where currency trades in whispers and winks, and where you learn very quickly that morality is flexible, but tips are not. And just when you think it's quieting down, at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., just before the milk wagons arrive, it wakes up again. A door slams, a drunk sings, a baby cries somewhere above a bakery that isn't really a bakery. And you? You keep walking, because in the red light district, sleep is a luxury no one can afford. And if you stay still too long, someone's going to charge you rent. Meet the madam, not your mother, not your teacher, but the CEO of the whole chaotic enterprise. She runs payroll, inventory, and mood management, all while holding a tiny dog and a cigar. You do not cross her. You know this immediately. The moment you step into her parlor, the air changes. It's warmer, heavier, like the room itself has learned to hold its breath. She doesn't rush. She doesn't explain. She simply looks at you, slowly, from your shoes to your face, as if mentally calculating your earning potential, your drama tolerance, and whether you're the kind of person who cries in hallways. She already knows the answers. Her house runs on rules, and they are not suggestions. She keeps them in her head, not on paper, because paper can be seized and burned, but memory is much harder to raid. You learn quickly that she notices everything. Which girls are late? Which clients linger too long? Which man upstairs is about to get sentimental and needs to be gently escorted back to reality? Let's talk about her office. It's not an office. It's a chair. A very good chair. Upholstered. Overstuffed. Positioned perfectly so she can see the stairs, the front door, and the mirror behind the bar. From this chair, she controls the entire ecosystem. She has a bell within reach, a ledger tucked under one elbow, and a drink that never seems to get empty. You don't remember seeing her pour it. Her ledger is sacred. Names, numbers, debts, favors, all written in neat, compact handwriting. This book knows things. Things about policemen, preachers, bankers, and at least one city councilman who insists on being called sir while doing absolutely nothing to deserve it. The ledger is why raids get postponed. The ledger is why fines disappear. The ledger is why the mayor's nephew mysteriously sobered up and found employment out of town. Now let's talk about her whistle. It's small, brass, polished. It hangs from a chain like jewelry, but it is not decorative. When the whistle blows, time folds in on itself. Conversations stop. Music halts. Somewhere, a man realizes he has made a very bad choice. You don't ask why the whistle blew. You just move. Doors open. Doors close. Someone is removed from the premises with impressive efficiency and minimal paperwork. You work for her, but you also live under her protection. That's the deal. She keeps the cops predictable, the clients manageable, and the truly dangerous men far away. In return, you follow the rules. You don't steal. You don't fight in public. You don't bring personal feelings into professional rooms. And above all, you don't embarrass the house. She settles disputes like a judge who's tired of court. Two girls arguing over a regular? She listens, nods, assigns new schedules, and somehow makes both of you feel slightly foolish. A client refusing to pay? She smiles, gestures to the bouncer, and the problem becomes educational. Sometimes she gives advice, not the gentle kind, the useful kind, about money, about men, about when to leave a room and when to stay silent. She's seen what happens to women who don't plan exits. She's buried some of them, quietly, and yet, for all the steel in her spine, she is not cruel. She knows birthdays. She notices when someone's sick. She enforces rest days the way other people enforce taxes. If you break down once, she gives you space. Twice, she gives you a warning. 3 times, she suggests a different line of work. Because this is a business, a dangerous one. And she is very, very good at it. So you listen, you learn, you don't touch her dog. And every night, when the lamps are lit and the street begins to hum again, you're reminded of one simple truth. The madam doesn't just run the house. She keeps it standing. You're not a prostitute. You're a sporting girl, a soiled dove, or, in particularly fancy brothels, a hospitality companion with conversational skills. Titles change. The job doesn't. You start your evening in the parlor, a velvet-draped room with gas lights, a piano missing 3 keys, and the faint, ever-present scent of cheap cologne and expensive regret. The madam hands you a sash. Tonight, you're a hostess. Tomorrow, you'll be a parlor entertainer. Last week, you were, briefly and uncomfortably, a literary muse, after a city inspector started snooping and the house pivoted overnight to an ill-fated arts focus. You recited half a poem about springtime before a man in suspenders fell asleep on your shoulder. The applause was polite, but not encouraging. Job titles are elastic. The authorities raid disorderly houses, not conversation salons. So, the name on the sign changes with every moral panic or new ordinance. Are you a dancer, a waitress, a companion for supper? Sometimes you're all 3 at once. Sometimes within the same hour. On paper, you're practically a pillar of the community. In reality, you're counting the hours until you can take off your shoes and stop pretending to care about the local alderman's views on tariffs. In the fancier brothels, you might get a business card, Miss Lila May, evening entertainer and social specialist. It looks elegant until you realize half your clients can't read, and the other half only read between the lines. The city's moral guardians complain that vice is everywhere, but only if you squint just right at the classified ads. Young ladies wanted for light work in refined home must have good manners and a steady constitution. Congratulations, you're hired, you're doomed, and your first duty is to smile convincingly. Meanwhile, the titles serve a purpose. They keep the peace, grease the wheels, and help everyone save face. If your mother writes, she asks after your job at the boarding house. If your neighbor is nosy, you explain you're in hospitality. If a priest stops by, you become a flower arranger, and the madam hands him a complimentary bouquet with a knowing wink. It gets more absurd. In cities with stricter laws, girls are listed as laundresses or manicurists. You do wash things, occasionally, though not, strictly speaking, hands. You do nails, but mostly your own. While waiting for someone's gentleman caller to finish discussing the weather for 30 minutes at a time, in San Francisco, you might even be registered as a musician's assistant. No one asks what instrument you play, but all these names blur together at the end of the night. Clients don't care. The city pretends not to notice. The only person who really keeps track is the madam, who will still deduct a quarter from your pay if you forget to sign out as guest entertainer on the official ledger. And in the off chance a reformer stumbles in, you become a reader, a game hostess, Or, if you're feeling bold, a companion for intellectual improvement. The reformer leaves flustered, clutching a pamphlet and convinced you've been saved. You haven't. You're just very, very good at improv. Every now and then, you wonder if you could ever have a job with a normal title. Something like clerk or teacher. But then you remember, no clerk ever got tipped with a diamond stick pin or serenaded at midnight by a trombone player named Cheese. So the titles change, the job doesn't. You learn to answer to anything, smile at everything, and keep a running list in your head of all the things you've officially been. Just in case someone from City Hall asks. And when you walk out at sunrise, shoes in hand, you know you've survived another night as a parlor girl, a soiled dove, a hospitality consultant, and, most importantly, a survivor with a business card no one believes and a story no one could invent. A crib is not for babies. It's a windowless room with a bed, a lock, and a curtain separating you from judgment and the smell of boiled cabbage. Welcome to your office. Let's set the scene. You walk down a narrow hallway lined with mismatched wallpaper and flickering gaslights. Your heels click on warped wooden planks, echoing louder than you'd like. Every door leads to a crib, and every crib is a little miracle of minimalism, Victorian decor, and accidental slapstick comedy. If you've ever worked in an office cubicle, imagine less privacy, more wallpaper, and an even smaller chance of ergonomic seating. The bed is the centerpiece. But that's a generous word for a mattress that's seen more years and stories than anyone in the building is willing to admit. It creaks in Morse code, it's lumpy in all the wrong places, and it emits a suspicious crunch if you sit down too hard. Under the bed? Don't look. If you accidentally drop something, accept your loss and move on. That's the house policy. Your only view is a curtain, not a wall, just a thin, faded curtain that's theoretically there for privacy but mostly there to catch dust and let you eavesdrop on your neighbors. If you're lucky, your curtain actually covers the door. If you're not, you get a privacy scarf, which is really just a handkerchief tied to a nail. Either way, it blocks the view about as effectively as wishful thinking. Soundproofing is a myth. Every whisper, cough, giggle, or squabble carries straight through the fabric. You know everyone else's schedule whether you want to or not. It's a symphony of sighs, arguments, laughter, and, sometimes, unidentified thumping noises that you all politely ignore. If you ever wanted to be an expert in human drama, this is your postgraduate program. The only light is what you bring in. A candle if you're feeling fancy, a kerosene lamp if you're flush, or, on lean weeks, the glow from the hallway. Shadows dance on the walls, making everything look more mysterious and tragic than it probably is. The air is thick with a stew of perfume, sweat, stale tobacco, and, for some reason, always that faint note of boiled cabbage. Nobody's cooking cabbage. It's just there, an eternal mystery. On the wall, there's usually a single hook for your dress and a battered shelf for whatever treasures you can afford, a comb, a tin of rouge, a letter from home you read when you need to remember why you're here and not somewhere quieter. Sometimes there's a cracked mirror with just enough glass left to check your lipstick. Sometimes there's a tiny window, but it's painted shut and faces a brick wall. A view, the madam calls it, with a wink. Privacy, as a concept, is a running joke. Customers appreciate the illusion, but everybody knows that a curtain won't stop a nosy neighbor, a jealous coworker, or a police raid. If things get loud, you pretend not to notice. If someone starts crying, you quietly slip out for a breath of slightly fresher air, letting the curtain do the heavy lifting. You become an expert in the art of the quick change, clothes, personalities, moods. Because in the crib, every minute counts and every sound travels. You know how to smooth the sheets in 10 seconds flat and how to make your bed look inviting with nothing but hope and a pillow that smells like last night's cheap gin. At the end of the shift, you pull the curtain shut behind you and lock the door, as if that will keep out the world. For a few minutes, you have a room of your own. Even if it's no bigger than a train compartment and just as wobbly. You collapse on the bed, listen to the distant piano in the parlor, and hope that tomorrow's cabbage will at least come with potatoes. The crib is not glamorous, it is not comfortable, but in this world, it is yours. And sometimes, that's enough. Once a week, the local health inspector stops by to make sure you're fit for business. He has no medical degree, but does have a clipboard and a creepy mustache. Science. This is the high water mark of public health in the early 1900s, where medicine and farce meet in a parlor full of nervous women and suspiciously clean bedsheets. The ritual starts the same way every time. A sharp knock on the front door, the madam's warning glance, and then the inspector's entrance, carrying all the authority of a man who once read a medical pamphlet and now considers himself a crusader for cleanliness. His mustache enters first, surveying the scene, twitching with self-importance. He's not a doctor, but he has developed a fine eye for detail, mostly because he's been peeking into bedrooms for 10 years. His tools include a pencil, a battered notebook, and a badge with the city's name half scratched off. If you ask about qualifications, he'll rattle off the name of an uncle who used to be a dentist. You're not reassured. You line up with the other girls in the parlor, holding your breath and clutching your health certificate, an official-looking piece of paper stamped by someone who might have been a veterinarian last week. The inspector goes down the row, asking the sorts of questions that would get him slapped in any other context. Feeling well? Any complaints? How's your appetite? Any rashes? You say fine and smile politely. That's the script. The inspection lasts about as long as a sneeze and is half as effective. If he's feeling thorough, he'll check the bedrooms for sanitary conditions. This involves opening a few closet doors, poking at a mattress, and making pointed comments about dust or a mysterious smudge on the wallpaper. He will never, ever notice the whiskey bottle hidden behind the curtain. He will, however, spend an unusual amount of time examining the lace on your dressing gown and asking if the girls are staying hydrated. Science, again. Sometimes he's accompanied by a young assistant, a nervous city clerk who spends the visit staring at his shoes and scribbling notes about general atmosphere. Satisfactory. Faint odor of roses. Minor draft. If the assistant blushes, the madam tips him an extra coin and sends him home with a slice of cake. There are perks to every job. You'd think this parade of faux experts would improve public health. In theory, it's about preventing the spread of disease. In practice, it's about filling out forms, collecting bribes, and pretending not to see the alderman's hat hanging on a bedroom doorknob. The city wants to appear moral, the madam wants to keep business running, and the inspector wants to collect his hazard pay, a generous envelope slipped to him on his way out. The inspections do have their rhythms. The girls are told to scrub the floors, air the linens, and look presentable, which mostly means not coughing when the inspector's in earshot. The housekeeper sprinkles rosewater around the parlor. Everyone puts on their cleanest dress, and the madam posts a notice reminding everyone to smile and nod. For a few hours each week, the brothel smells less like sweat and gin and more like a soap factory that lost a bet. But the health inspector isn't just here for the hygiene. He's here to remind you that your body is public property, at least for 10 minutes on Wednesdays. If you pass inspection, you're fit for business. If not, you're off the line until you can bring a note from a real doctor, one of the 3 in town who don't ask too many questions. Privacy, dignity, and genuine medical care are not part of the process. Officially, It's about safety. Unofficially, it's just theatre. At the end of the day, you roll your eyes, hang up your certificate, and get back to work. The city can't decide if you're a threat, a patient, or just another line on a balance sheet. But you survive the inspection, just like you survive everything else. With a joke, a wink, and the quiet knowledge that science is mostly a man with a mustache and a clipboard asking the wrong questions in the right rooms. Across town, a group of middle-aged women in high collars are holding a meeting. They are furious, they are praying, and they are absolutely convinced your ankles are the reason society is collapsing. They gather every Thursday evening in the back room of the church or the dusty parlor of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. The chairs are stiff, the tea is strong, and the cookies are so dry they might actually be a choking hazard. The ladies call themselves a society, though most people in town know them as the busybodies or the ankle patrol. They have a mission to save the city's soul, one judgmental flyer at a time. On the agenda tonight, the moral menace of loose women, followed closely by the perils of jazz, the scourge of card games, and who keeps stealing the good doilies. It's a long list. They're nothing if not thorough. The reformers have rules for everything. Skirt length, dancing, the proper number of buttons on a blouse. Too few is scandalous, too many is French. They keep meticulous notes and read articles about the dangers of white slavery, opium dens, and girls being lured into sin by foreign music and local charm. Their secret weapon? The petition. With practiced precision, they march door to door, collecting signatures from anyone slow enough to answer. The mayor's already received 3 this week, one demanding the closure of disorderly houses, one banning vulgar advertisements, and one politely requesting a halt to the public sale of pickles on Sundays, because the pickle vendor has wandering eyes. No vice is too small for their attention. To them, your life is a problem to be solved, preferably with prayer, but also, if necessary, with police action. Reformers have a talent for networking. They know the chief of police, the pastor, the city clerk, and every influential woman with a spare afternoon and a flair for confrontation. If a brothel is raided, you can bet someone in this room handed the constable a map and a stern talking to about the dangers of permissive window treatments. But their campaigns aren't just about you. Reformers are at war with the world. Fashion, leisure, music, youth, joy. If something is new, they do not trust it. If something is fun, it must be a gateway to ruin. If something involves ankles, it is already too late. They warn about moral decay in long-winded letters to the editor and pass out pamphlets with titles like The Path Back to Purity and Ankles, The Hidden Danger. Their meetings are a mixture of earnest concern and theatrical outrage. There is always one woman, usually Mrs. Hargrove, who claims she saw a man smile at a lady outside the post office and simply felt the devil's presence. They discuss strategies, more prayer, more petitions, and perhaps a well-timed bake sale to raise funds for a statue of temperance, fully clothed, naturally. Oddly, for all their bluster, reformers rarely visit the red light district in person. They prefer to operate at a safe distance, sending the police or a trembling young assistant with a stack of Bibles. If, by chance, one does wander into a parlor, the girls give her tea, smile politely, and listen to her speech about the wages of sin. The madam nods, offers to donate to the new roof fund, and everyone leaves satisfied, though not, perhaps, for the same reasons. In the end, the moral reformers are a part of the scenery, predictable, persistent, and oddly comforting in their outrage. The city would feel emptier without them. Their prayers float through the night air, mingling with the music and laughter. You're never sure if they're trying to save you, stop you, or just keep themselves busy until fashion changes and they can campaign for the right to show elbows. So you keep your ankles covered? your wit sharp, and your door locked, because if society ever does collapse, at least someone will be there to say, "I told you so." They say chivalry is dead. But every night you meet a man who says, "I don't usually do this," right before forgetting your name and his manners. You recognize the type as soon as they step through the door. He adjusts his collar, tips his hat, and offers an awkward smile meant to say, "I'm respectable," but his shoes are muddy, and he's already glancing around like he hopes nobody recognizes him. He will introduce himself as Charles, though the madam will mouth, his real name is Frank, over his shoulder. You are now the keeper of his most guarded secret. He's not here for pleasure, he's here for company. That's what they all say. The gentleman clients come in all shapes, the nervous young lawyer who apologizes for existing, the married shopkeeper who can't remember where he put his wedding ring, and the old-timer who brags about the war, and then falls asleep on your shoulder, halfway through his own story. Sometimes they tip well, sometimes they forget. Often they want to talk about their business, their hopes, their wives, who don't understand them, their children, who don't visit enough, or their health, which is either robust or tragically delicate, depending on whether they want pity or a discount. Their manners are hit or miss. Some bring flowers, bought hastily from the corner vendor, already wilting. Others bring candy, melted, pocket-warmed, and sometimes suspiciously rewrapped. One man brought a book of poetry, inscribed to a woman named Dorothy who wasn't you, and definitely wasn't his wife. You get used to the mix-ups. And then there are the not-so-gentlemen. The ones who swagger in, demand service like they're ordering a ham sandwich, and complain about the price of everything. They'll lecture you about virtue, call you sweetheart, and expect you to laugh at their jokes. Some are loud, some are mean, and some, God help you, try to play the piano. You learn to handle them all. The trick is reading the room, knowing when to listen, when to nod, when to interrupt with a joke or a glass of water. You become an expert in crisis management, ego repair, and conversational judo. You know which men tip better after losing at cards, which ones want advice disguised as compliments, and which ones simply want to sit in silence, holding your hand like a talisman against their own loneliness. There's a special category for the first-timers. These are the ones who talk too much, fidget with their cuffs, and ask if you think they're a bad person. You reassure them, professionally, gently, with just enough distance to keep the line between comfort and confession clear. Most won't remember your name, but you'll remember theirs, if only because they'll be back next week, pretending again it's their first time. Sometimes, a regular becomes a friend. Not in the real sense, but in the safe to sit with sense. He might bring news from outside, a joke from the barbershop, or a scarf when the weather turns cold. He'll say he worries about you. You'll smile, thank him, and remind yourself that concern is just another form of currency in this business. But most nights, it's a parade of men, each convinced his story is unique. You listen, you laugh, you tell him he's special. Then you watch him leave, coat buttoned, hat low, disappearing back into the world that pretends not to know your name either. And so, every night, chivalry staggers in, puts its feet on the furniture, and asks for forgiveness it hasn't earned. You keep a polite smile ready, a sharp comeback on standby, and your heart somewhere safe. Because tomorrow, there will be another gentleman who doesn't usually do this, and he'll need you to believe him just for tonight. No booze, no business. But also, suddenly everyone's hiding something, and cops are just confused about whether to arrest you or ask for a drink, or both. Prohibition arrives like a sanctimonious aunt with a grudge, knocking the gin out of your hand and insisting everyone will be healthier without it. But in the brothel, the promise of a dry America just means the party gets trickier, sneakier, and a whole lot more expensive. You wake up one morning and the bar is gone. Or, more accurately, it's hiding behind a fake wall, a bookshelf, or under the counter where the housekeeper suddenly does a roaring trade in cleaning solution that smells suspiciously like bathtub gin. The clientele change overnight. The old regulars are more nervous, glancing over their shoulders and whispering code words like tea party and special lemonade. The new ones show up with shifty eyes and wads of cash, eager for something that tastes like rebellion, even if it burns on the way down. The piano player switches to more cheerful tunes, trying to keep the mood light, but the laughter is sharper and the conversations are half-coded and twice as tense. For you, working in the red light district during Prohibition is like running a speakeasy inside a speakeasy. The brothel always walked the line between legal and illegal, but now the line is moving and nobody told you where it went. Is it a crime to pour a drink? Or only if you get caught? Can you get fined for excessive merriment? Or just for having a bottle of stomach tonic with a wink from the pharmacist? The madam, always 2 steps ahead, invests in thicker curtains and extra locks. She hires a new doorman whose only job is to shout, "Police!" if anyone in a blue coat comes near. The bouncer starts learning the difference between a raid and a routine visit, and the girls develop a 6th sense for hidden flasks and double agents. You become a master of the secret stash. There's a bottle in the flower vase, another in the piano, and one ingeniously disguised as cough syrup for seasonal sniffles. Everyone's suddenly got a cough. The police, for their part, aren't sure which laws they're supposed to enforce anymore. They used to collect their inspection fee at the door and move along, but now some want drinks, some want bribes, and some just want to sit down and complain about how much paperwork this new world order involves. You never know if they're here to arrest the bartender, flirt with the madam, or just take a break from the cold. Sometimes all 3, in that order. And then there are the raids, loud, theatrical, and mostly for show. The reformers cheer, the newspapers write about another den of vice vanquished, and the next night everything reopens under a different name with the same crowd. You get used to pouring gin into teacups and learning phrases like club member and authorized guest. The sign outside says tea room, but the tea tastes like disappointment and juniper berries. Prohibition turns everyone into an actor. The clients act innocent, the madam acts charitable, the city acts surprised, and you act like you don't know the judge who's here every Thursday for his digestive. Everybody knows the rules are fake, but everyone's too busy pretending to care. You're just trying to keep the drinks flowing, the business running, and your shoes dry. None of which is easier in a world that suddenly thinks a glass of sherry is the gateway to chaos. And so, in the end, Prohibition doesn't clean up the streets, it just moves the mess indoors and doubles the price at the door. The only thing more intoxicating than the liquor is the absurdity of it all. And tomorrow night, the party starts again. Just as loud, just as secret, and just a little bit more ridiculous. They're here to shut you down, right after they finish their undercover investigation that somehow took 4 hours and cost them a week's salary in tips. You see them coming before they even knock. The vice squad tries to blend in, but they always stand out, collars too high, hats too low, pockets jangling with notepads, badges, and spare change for emergency expenses. They stroll down the block in pairs, pretending not to know each other, pausing outside your door just long enough for everyone inside to notice. The madam rolls her eyes and shouts the code word. Something subtle, like tea time, or allergic to onions, and suddenly everyone is on their best behavior. When they finally push through the door, they announce themselves in voices just a little too loud, as if they're narrating for the benefit of an imaginary newspaper reporter hiding under the couch. Vice Squad, open up. We have reason to believe there's illegal activity on the premises. The girls giggle behind their hands. You line up in the parlor, pretending you're at a church social, just with shorter skirts and better music. Their investigation is thorough in all the wrong ways. They interview the madam in her office for a suspiciously long time, emerging with lipstick on their cuffs and an odd satisfaction in their expressions. They inspect the refreshments for contraband, which usually means sampling the whiskey to make sure it's not too strong. One will wander upstairs checking for fire hazards, which takes as long as it takes to verify that every room is up to code. And by code, they mean cash or favors. You quickly realize the Vice Squad's main skill isn't law enforcement, it's plausible deniability. Everything is written in the vaguest language imaginable. Evidence of inappropriate behavior, possible exchange of currency, alleged excessive merriment. The paperwork will say one thing, the evening will say another. If you're unlucky, they'll haul a few people in for the cameras. If you're lucky, everyone gets off with a warning and the unspoken rule: pay your dues, keep things quiet, and don't embarrass anyone important. Sometimes they bring photographers, not for the evidence, just for the spectacle. Documenting the scene, they call it, as if catching you in a blur of lace and laughter is some kind of public service. The next morning's headlines will shriek about vice and degradation, with grainy pictures of doorknobs and blurred faces. You clip the article, add it to your scrapbook, and joke about being famous for all the wrong reasons. But hypocrisy is the Vice Squad's true specialty. They're scandalized by what they see, right up until payday. They'll preach about morality while accepting a thank you envelope slipped under the table. They condemn your profession in public, but in private, they ask for discounts and discretion. The same officer who raids the brothel at midnight is spotted at the corner bar by 2 a.m., toasting the good people of the city with whiskey confiscated from your pantry. Everyone knows the game, but no one admits it out loud. The city wants its vices managed, not eliminated. The police want their cut, the politicians want plausible deniability, and the reformers want headlines. You want to make a living without your door being kicked in every third Thursday. At the end of their sting, the Vice Squad tips their hats, pockets their evidence, and promises to keep an eye on things. The madam thanks them, the girls wave goodbye, and the parlor fills with laughter the moment the door closes. Because everyone knows they'll be back, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, always undercover and always with a brand new excuse. It's a farce, a ritual, a dance. And as long as everyone remembers their part, the city keeps spinning, the tips keep flowing, and the Vice Squad goes home just a little richer and a lot less innocent than they arrived. Everyone's in on it. The butcher gives discounts. The seamstress knows your measurements better than you do. The local preacher? He's praying for your soul and possibly renting the upstairs room on Thursdays. The brothel may look like just another house with fancy curtains and too many potted plants in the window. But inside, it's a beating heart in the city's underground economy. Every bill that changes hands, every pie baked, every length of lace hemmed, ties back to the business in ways nobody admits and everybody understands. Forget what the newspapers say. This place isn't just a den of vice. It's the unofficial chamber of commerce. Open late, strictly cash, and with a credit policy that would make a banker weep. Start with the essentials. The butcher on the corner gives the house a special price on sausages and beef, delivered with a wink and a friendly don't mention it. He knows you by name, knows who prefers chicken, and sometimes drops off a ham if you promise to keep his wife's cousin out of the parlor when she's in town. In return, he gets referrals, hungry clients, leftover bread, or, on rare holidays, a bottle of something not found at the pharmacy. The seamstress is even more indispensable. She fixes rips, stitches petticoats, and can let out a bodice in under 6 minutes flat. She's silent on the outside, but there's not a secret in the district she hasn't measured, mended, or tucked discreetly into a sleeve. Sometimes, she takes payment in gossip. Sometimes, in favors. Her ledger is as colorful as her thread, and far more complicated. Every local business gets a slice. The laundryman delivers your linens at midnight so the neighbors won't gossip much. The piano tuner never charges full price, especially not after that one time he woke up on the parlor couch with a feather boa and no memory of how he got there. Even the baker sends over yesterday's pastries at half price, and nobody asks why so many eclairs are missing their cream. Money flows in strange directions here. Clients arrive with full wallets and leave lighter, but the cash doesn't just stay in the house. It circulates. Hats for the girls, gifts for the doorman's children, the occasional donation to the local church roof fund. The preacher's sermons are fire and brimstone by Sunday. But on Thursday nights, his coat hangs suspiciously in the foyer while he counsels lost souls upstairs. Then there's credit. In the brothel, credit is complicated. A girl might owe the madam for new shoes or a medical visit. The madam might owe the liquor supplier for last week's shipment of cleaning fluid. The liquor supplier, in turn, owes half the police force a little something each Christmas, or else his deliveries might start arriving with mysterious delays. And so the web grows, sticky, tangled, and impossible to escape. The economy of the brothel is barter, trade, reputation, and silent understanding. It's knowing that if the florist's daughter is about to get married, the girls will chip in for a veil, no questions asked. If the grocer's son falls sick, someone leaves an envelope on his doorstep. If the mayor's wife needs a favor, the favor is always returned, eventually, and usually with interest. You learn quickly that nothing happens in this neighborhood without the house knowing about it. Who's moving in? Who's moving out? Who got a job at the new hotel? Who needs help? And who just needs to borrow a dress for a special occasion? The brothel is the unofficial switchboard, the grapevine, the safety net nobody mentions at Sunday supper. And at the end of the week, when the books are balanced and the last lamp is dimmed, you realize this secret economy isn't just about money. It's about survival, connection, a quiet, stubborn resilience that keeps everyone afloat, no matter what the headlines say. In a city that pretends it doesn't need you, you're the reason its heart keeps beating. And everyone, whether they admit it or not, is a customer. Your madam has rules. Not for the customers, of course, for you. Chief among them, no attachments, especially not to that sweet jazz pianist who brings you peppermint drops. House rules are everywhere, posted on the kitchen wall, recited at orientation, and whispered from girl to girl when the madam isn't looking. They're less about decorum and more about survival. No swearing in the parlor, at least not when the guests are listening. No smoking inside, unless it's after hours and the windows are cracked open just wide enough to let out the truth. And, most important of all, no falling in love. The last one is repeated with extra emphasis. Sometimes with a warning glance, or, if you're new, a story about what happened to the last girl who thought her favorite client was different. At first, the rules seem arbitrary. What's a little swearing among friends? Why not smoke, if everyone's already breathing in enough rosewater and kerosene to knock out a bull? But you learn quickly. The rules keep order. Swearing leads to shouting, shouting to arguments, arguments to broken lamps, and unwanted attention from the neighbors. Smoking, the madam insists, is just an invitation for fire, and in a house filled with velvet curtains and nervous energy, a spark can ruin everything. But it's the last rule that matters most. No falling in love. You might think it's an old cliché, the stuff of cheap romance novels. But here, it's the difference between making it through the season or waking up with a broken heart and no job. The madam has seen it all. She's watched girls lose themselves to handsome regulars, promising poets, or, most dangerous of all, jazz musicians with sad eyes and fast fingers. It never ends well. The men move on. The women stay. minus their savings, their trust, and sometimes their freedom. You're reminded every time you spot the jazz pianist at the corner of the room, tinkling out bluesy chords and slipping you peppermint drops with a wink. He's sweet, charming, and doomed. He asks if you want to get away someday. The answer is always no, even when your heart says maybe. The madam notices everything. She raises an eyebrow when he lingers, makes a note in her ledger, and later, as you're folding sheets in the laundry room, she says softly, "Careful. Rules exist for a reason." There are other rules, of course. No borrowing without asking, no inviting clients upstairs without approval, no skipping your share of chores, no matter how tired you are or how much the client insisted you were the only one who understood him. You can wear your own clothes, but don't show up in anything too daring or too dull. The madam will assign you a new dress if you cross that line. You are, after all, a reflection of the house's reputation, and reputation is everything. Breaking the rules has consequences. A fine. A week's worth of night shifts. Cleaning duty. Sometimes a lecture, sometimes a new assignment, polishing the brass on the stairs or sorting laundry until you think your fingers might fall off. The rules are enforced with precision, but not cruelty. The madam's discipline is practical, not personal. She wants the house to run smoothly, the clients to leave happy, and the girls to stay safe, even from themselves. You don't always like the rules. Sometimes you dream of tossing them out the window and running away with the pianist, or lighting a cigarette in the parlor just to see what would happen. But you don't. You follow the rules, because in a world stacked against you, they're the only thing standing between chaos and something like security. So you keep your language clean, your matches unlit, and your heart locked up tight. The rules might feel heavy, but in a place where everything else is up for negotiation, they're the one thing you can count on. No matter how sweet the music, or how tempting the man with the peppermint drops. They call them shelters. You call them prisons. These are the places where repentant women are supposed to learn sewing, modesty, and how to cry quietly. You've heard about the rescue home since your first week in the district. It comes up in whispers, threats from reformers, warnings from the madam, cautionary tales from the older girls. The pitch sounds the same every time. A fresh start, a roof over your head, honest work and clean living. But when you see the building, it's just a brick box behind a locked iron gate. The windows are barred, the hedges trimmed to discourage hiding, and the door closes behind you with a click that sounds like goodbye. Once inside, you're processed, an intake, but not the friendly kind. You surrender your clothes and, with them, your last piece of self. You're handed a starched, shapeless dress, the universal uniform of fallen women everywhere. The matron, always a woman with the stiffest posture and the iciest stare in 3 counties, gives you a list of rules that make the madams look gentle by comparison. Lights out at 9, no talking in the halls, no visitors, except pre-approved family members who are encouraged to look disappointed at all times. The days are a blur of schedules. Morning prayers, laundry duty, sewing lessons, more prayers, cleaning, and finally, a lecture about redemption. You're expected to find comfort in repetition, but mostly you find exhaustion. Every hour is meant to remind you of how far you've fallen and how much you have to climb. Meals are plain, eaten in silence, with conversation limited to "please pass the salt" and "yes, ma'am." Laughter is discouraged. Tears are expected, but only if you mop them up before a supervisor notices. The rescue home's idea of rehabilitation is to break you down and rebuild you in the image of a model housemaid. They teach you how to hem a skirt, how to serve tea, how to keep your eyes lowered and your answers brief. You are supposed to be grateful for the discipline, but it tastes more like penance. Outside the windows, life goes on. Horses clatter down the street, boys shout in alleyways, and somewhere, A jazz song floats on the breeze. You feel it all slipping away from you, bit by bit. The other women in the home are a gallery of lost stories. Some angry, some broken, some simply tired of being tired. There are whispers at night, after lights out, of running away, of starting over somewhere no one knows your name. But the gates are locked, and the city is waiting with suspicion and scorn. The worst part is the visits from the reformers. They sweep in every Sunday, clutching Bibles and handkerchiefs, speaking in hopeful tones about fresh beginnings. They ask about your progress, your faith, your commitment to modesty. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they scold. Always, they leave feeling reassured that they've done a good deed, while you wonder if you'll ever see the outside of the gates again. You're told that if you prove yourself, if you pray hard enough, sew straight enough, and keep your head down, you'll be released to respectable employment, usually as a laundress, a maid, or, if you're lucky, an assistant in a milliner's shop. You're never sent home. That door closed the minute you walked through the rescue home's gate. By the time your sentence is up, you've learned every stitch, every psalm, every rule about where to look and when to keep silent. You step back into the city, a little thinner, a little quieter, carrying a certificate of redemption that feels suspiciously like a permission slip for invisibility. The rescue home was supposed to save you. Maybe it did, in its own peculiar, suffocating way. Or maybe it just taught you that freedom has 1,000 disguises, and sometimes even a locked door can't keep a survivor in. Turning a trick means work. A fish means a customer. Lipstick on the doorknob means do, not, enter. It's like espionage, but with more feathers. You learn the language of the house your first week, sometimes your first night. It's not written down anywhere, but everyone knows it. The brothel has its own dictionary, evolving with every raid, every reformer's sermon, every city crackdown. It's survival, strategy, and solidarity rolled into one. You may not have a college education, but you're fluent in parlor French and conversational in Madame's Morse code. It starts simple. A trick is a client, but also the act of working. Turning means you're on the clock. Off the line means you're not. A John is a man with money. A Mark is a man without it. Gents are regulars, at least regular enough to remember your favorite color and forget their wife's name. If you call someone a fish, it's not about his cologne, though sometimes it could be. It means he's new, naive, and likely to overpay. Everyone likes a fish. Then there are the house signals. A silk scarf tied to a bedpost means room in use. A shoe in the hallway is the universal sign for give me 5 more minutes. If you see a pair of gloves on the parlor table, the madam is interviewing a new girl and doesn't want to be disturbed. But the most important sign, the lipstick on the doorknob, is unbreakable code. It's a boundary, a safety net, and sometimes a silent SOS. Do. Not. Enter. If you do, you're responsible for what happens next, and no one will help you smooth things over with the madam. Communication is everything in this world. The girls develop their own shorthand. A tap on the wall means bring me water. 2 taps means bring the bouncer. 3 taps means this client's a talker. Please save me with an emergency. You learn to write notes with eyebrow movements and signal danger with a cough that's not quite a cough. The madam has her own codes, of course. If she says, "We're expecting company," it means the vice squad is sniffing around. Polish the silver is code for hide the gin. T for 2 means a private client is coming and the girls are to disappear until the coast is clear. If she ever says, "Take the night off," you check your purse and start looking for a new place to work, because something is about to hit the fan. Slang protects you from outsiders too. Reformers and police try to listen in, but half the time they leave more confused than when they arrived. Clients pick up a few phrases, but never the important ones. They think dressing for dinner means putting on your best, when it really means stashing your cash somewhere the madam can't find it. Sometimes the codes are practical. You agree on hand signals with the girl in the next room, a snap of fingers for help, a humming tune to let her know everything's fine. Sometimes the codes are silly. Secret nicknames for customers, invented holidays, or the annual competition for who can sneak the most feathers out of a client's hat without being noticed. But at its heart, all this secret communication is about safety and control. In a world where you have precious little of either, language is your shield. You share jokes in whispers, invent new words when the old ones get discovered, and pass wisdom down like family heirlooms. Because in the end, the real message of the brothel is never spoken aloud. We watch out for each other. Whether it's lipstick on a doorknob, a tap on the wall, or a look exchanged across a crowded parlor, you're never alone. And sometimes, that's all the code you need. You can't breathe, but you look incredible. Fashion in the brothel is less about comfort and more about convincing a drunk man to pay double. Getting ready for work isn't a quick affair. It's a ritual, a process that begins before sundown, and sometimes ends with you wishing you'd been born in a time when flannel pajamas were considered seductive. You start with the corset. Stiff, boned, and laced so tight you start to reconsider your lunch choices. Someone, usually the girl with the strongest arms, helps you yank the strings, pull, and yank again until your waist is the size of a prayer and your lungs are merely decorative. Beauty is pain, the madam chirps, tightening one more notch for luck. You wonder if anyone in history has ever actually fainted from excess loveliness. Next come the stockings, rolled up over knees that will spend the night half-crossed on velvet chairs. Stockings are expensive, so you learn to mend runs with the tiniest needle, creating a patchwork of silk and determination. Then the petticoat, a frilly, itchy skirt designed to poof just so and rustle with every step, making you sound like a particularly fashionable house cat. And then the dress. Oh, the dress. Velvet in winter, silk in summer, all ruffles, bows, and a neckline that makes the madam smile and your modesty blush. If it fits perfectly, it's because the seamstress has already re-hemmed, let out, or taken in every seam twice. A good dress is a prized asset. A great one can turn a maybe later into a take my whole paycheck. The right color catches the lamplight, flatters your skin, and hides the fact that you haven't slept since Monday. Now, the shoes. Heels that could double as self-defense weapons, balancing you somewhere between elegance and ankle disaster. You become a master at gliding, toe first, on floors that creak and in hallways that tilt, dodging wayward cats, spilt gin, and the occasional client who thinks he's Fred Astaire after 2 glasses of punch. Jewelry comes next, a necklace borrowed, earrings bartered, a hair comb with enough fake pearls to fool a man who can't remember his own address. Rouge, powder, and lipstick applied in the glow of a candle or, if you're lucky, a smudged mirror propped against a stack of hat boxes. You dab perfume on your wrists and behind your ears, just enough to mask the scent of boiled cabbage drifting from the kitchen. Comfort isn't the goal. The goal is illusion, soft curves, bright eyes, effortless charm. Every step, every breath is calculated. You lean just right to make the dress sparkle, toss your head so the earrings catch the lamp, smile through pinched toes, and a ribcage squeezed tighter than a reformer's sense of humor. By the time the clients walk in, you're a vision of unattainable glamour floating above the fray. If only your feet didn't hurt so much. You learn to adapt, sitting with perfect posture so the corset doesn't dig, crossing your legs at just the right angle to take pressure off your shoes, hiding the faint red marks on your skin with powder and practiced indifference. Between clients, you slip into the kitchen to loosen your laces, kick off a heel, or steal a cool cloth for the back of your neck. Some nights, the housemaid will massage your shoulders in exchange for half a cigarette and a gossip update. There's a strange pride in pulling it all off. The costume, the discomfort, the impossible balancing act. You learn that beauty isn't effortless. It's engineered, stitched together with thread, willpower, and just enough hope to get you through another night. And when the last client leaves and the last lamp is snuffed, you peel off the dress, the corset, the shoes, and for a moment, just a moment, you can breathe. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again. Because in this world, looking incredible is part of the job, and you're worth every cent. Even if you do have corset lines on your ribs until Christmas. Journalists in 1909 have discovered a scandal. Women are being lured into vice by evil foreigners with hypnotic eyes. Or maybe they just didn't want to be housemaids anymore. The headlines are everywhere. White slavery in our midst, girls snatched from innocence. Foreign fiends lure maidens into shadowy dens. Newspapers can't print enough exclamation marks. Every corner newsboy is hawking the latest tale of terror. And every mother in the city suddenly clutches her daughter's wrist with extra force whenever they pass. A saloon, a hotel, or, heaven forbid, a music hall with a red curtain. The media, always eager for a good panic, have outdone themselves. If you believe the morning edition, the city's teeming with mustachioed villains, mysterious coded advertisements, and a bottomless pit of moral decay lurking right beneath the nearest gas lamp. You get swept up in the storm whether you want to or not. Reformers, already primed by a decade of ankle-induced outrage, clutch the headlines and organize urgent meetings in church basements. Suddenly, there are new lectures, new petitions, and a fresh supply of pamphlets warning against unnatural amusements. Politicians leap onto the panic like it's a bandwagon with first-class seats, passing urgent legislation to protect the city's virtue, which mostly means giving the police new hats and the vice squad new excuses to drop by for inspections. Of course, in the brothel, you and the other girls watch it all with a mixture of concern, confusion, and barely suppressed laughter. No one asked you why you're here. No journalist in a pressed collar bothered to interview the actual women rescued from these shadowy dens. If they had, they might have learned a few simple truths. Most of you left the farm, the mill, or the respectable housemaid job by choice. You came looking for money, for adventure, for something other than peeling potatoes and scrubbing floors. If a mysterious foreigner with hypnotic eyes was involved, he probably worked at the bakery and couldn't hypnotize a cat. Still, the panic has real consequences. New laws pass overnight, and suddenly there are fresh raids, new paperwork, and a lot more questions asked at the boarding house. Cops are everywhere, sometimes arresting the wrong people, sometimes just collecting tips for looking the other way. Clients become more nervous, checking the exits and lowering their voices, convinced that white slavery is waiting in every parlor. And the brothel adapts, because it must. The madam starts running background checks on anyone with a foreign accent and more than 2 buttons on his shirt. Girls swap stories, some true, some invented, about how they escaped from evil masterminds in order to placate visiting social workers. The parlor conversation becomes even more coded, with everyone pretending to be shocked at the terrible things they read about in the news. It's a kind of game, a survival tactic, and a chance to poke fun at the reformers who stop by to hand out pamphlets and leave, as always, without listening. If the panic has a bright side, it's that it gives the girls a new joke for the end of the night. Watch out, or you'll get hypnotized into folding laundry for free. Laughter, as always, is the best shield against nonsense. Privately, you wonder how many reporters have ever set foot in a brothel outside of work hours. The white slave panic is a media circus. But it's also a lesson. Public fear, once unleashed, is hard to put back in its box. The city scrambles to save you from a fate you already chose. While real problems, poverty, violence, lack of choices, get buried under headlines and hysteria. So you keep your head down, your sense of humor sharp, and your story straight for the next inspection. Because in 1909, the only thing more dangerous than a brothel is a slow news day, and a city that would rather believe a fable than listen to the women living it. By law, you can't open on Sundays, which is ironic because half your clients are at church and the other half are trying to sneak out of choir practice. Sunday mornings in the district are oddly quiet. The gas lights are dimmed, the curtains drawn, and the usual parade of laughter and clinking glasses replaced by a symphony of church bells and distant hymns. Officially, every parlour and crib is shuttered, every piano player off duty, every working girl sleeping in or reading a borrowed novel. That's what the ordinance says. Closed for business, open for salvation. But the truth, as always, is much messier. The City Council passed the Sunday closure laws to prove their moral fibre. After all, nothing says good governance like legislating rest for everyone except the preacher and the city's laundresses. Brothel doors are locked, but it's more for show than effect. You're not allowed to work, but the madam is still tallying accounts, settling debts, and planning Monday's menu. The only difference is the soundtrack. Instead of ragtime, it's a muffled sermon from the next street over, the congregation's amens floating through the morning haze. The clients, meanwhile, have their own routines. The truly devoted are in the front pews, nodding vigorously at the pastor's warnings against temptation. Some even bring their wives for extra credit. The less devout find creative ways to take the air or visit a sick friend, slipping out the back of the church, hat low, hoping no one notices their sudden passion for fresh air. A few, bolder souls attempt both. Singing the loudest at the morning hymn, and then appearing at your back door at exactly 12:05 p.m., hat in hand, and repentance conveniently left behind with the collection plate. Sunday hypocrisy is a local art form. The same alderman who sponsored the closure law is rumoured to take his afternoon constitutional right past the brothel every week, pausing just long enough to tip his hat at the window. The chief of police delivers fiery lectures against moral decay from the pulpit, then quietly collects his inspection fee from the madam on his way home. Even the choir director has a standing order for 2 bottles of medicinal sherry, delivered after sundown, of course. The girls take Sunday in stride. Some actually do rest, soak their feet, mend stockings, or write letters home that mention everything but the truth. Others hold impromptu card games in the kitchen, betting with buttons and borrowed coins. There's a kind of camaraderie in enforced idleness, a rare chance to be together without pretending for the benefit of clients or reformers. Stories are swapped, secrets traded, laughter echoing down hallways that feel a little less burdened by expectation. Still, there's always an air of watchfulness. You're never sure who might decide to drop in and check for illicit activity. The madam keeps a tray of tea and ginger biscuits on hand for unexpected visitors. Nothing says respectability like the aroma of oversteeped Earl Grey and stale cookies. If someone official knocks, you answer in your Sunday best, Bible on the table, embroidery in hand. Just a quiet day at home, officer. Would you care for a biscuit? And when the sun sets and the bells stop ringing, the district slowly comes back to life. Lamps are lit, parlours aired out, and by nightfall, the same faces from the morning's service return, hat askew, tie loosened, pockets jingling. They greet you like old friends, their conscience clean as freshly pressed linen. Sunday, it seems, is sacred, just not in the way anyone admits. The law closes your doors for a day, but it can't quite keep the city's secrets or its appetites at bay. And in a world built on unspoken agreements and mutually assured discretion, you learn to take your Sabbath where you find it. Feet up, cards in hand, laughter shared behind closed curtains, waiting for Monday's mask to settle back in place. It takes a team to run a brothel, one to change the sheets, one to break up fights, and one to quietly hand you a bottle of laudanum and not ask questions. No one ever pictures the staff behind the curtain. They imagine a brothel as a parade of velvet, laughter, and dramatic entrances. But the real machinery is backstage, a rotating cast of unsung heroes who keep the whole chaotic operation spinning. You can't run a house like this alone, and you wouldn't want to try. It's like hosting a dinner party for 40 guests every night. Only half of them forget to RSVP, and the other half bring emotional baggage instead of a bottle of wine. First up, the housekeeper. She's up before dawn, already elbows, deep in soap suds and muttering about last night's stains. She knows every girl's favorite pillow and which ones hide cookies under their mattresses. She's equal parts cleaner, confidant, and den mother, always ready with a fresh sheet or a sharp word, depending on what you need most. If you lose a stocking, she finds it. If you break a vase, she fixes it with tape, glue, and a roll of the eyes that says, "Try not to let it happen again." You'd trust her with your secrets, because she already knows most of them. Then there's the bouncer, the quiet mountain who sits by the door, arms crossed, watching everyone with the patience of a stone Buddha and the reflexes of a startled cat. His name is something like Big Joe, or Tiny, ironic of course, and he's the reason most trouble ends before it starts. You watch him handle a rowdy client with just a look, a raised eyebrow, a slow stretch of knuckles, and suddenly the man who was shouting is apologizing and backing down the stairs with impressive humility. The bouncer is judge, jury, and if necessary, furniture mover. He keeps the peace, carries the heavy things, and makes sure every girl gets home safe at the end of the night. No one messes with him, not even the vice squad. And then there's the pharmacist. Not the one on Main Street with the shiny white coat, but the in-house miracle worker, usually a woman with a satchel of secrets. She's the one with bottles of headache powders, soothing syrups, and, when needed, a quiet dose of laudanum for nerves or heartbreak or sleepless nights. She never asks why you need it. She just checks your pulse, looks you in the eyes, and tells you to rest. She knows every ache in the house, physical and otherwise. When the madam can't fix it, the pharmacist can. Her remedies are sometimes scientific, sometimes pure faith, but always delivered with discretion. It's a strange family, patched together by necessity and the understanding that the house doesn't run without every cog in place. There's the cook, who manages to feed an army with 3 chickens and a sack of potatoes. The errand boy, who can disappear into the city and return with anything from new hairpins to a forged letter of recommendation. And the handyman, who keeps the pipes working, the doors swinging, and the lights just bright enough for business, but dim enough for dignity. You see them every day, but rarely all at once. The housekeeper passes you a clean towel with a wink. The bouncer tips his hat as you go upstairs. The pharmacist slips a wrapped candy into your pocket along with the medicine, just because. They are the background music to your nightly performance, keeping the house running when the world outside is loud, dangerous, and unpredictable. In a job that asks you to play 100 roles, hostess, therapist, entertainer, secret keeper, it's easy to forget you're part of a team. But when the sheets are crisp, the hallway's quiet, and you have what you need to get through another night, you remember. Survival is a group effort, and every player counts. Yes, really. In more than one city, the women refused to work until conditions improved. You haven't seen chaos until you've seen a brothel picket line. It always starts with a whisper. One girl in the laundry room, rolling her eyes and saying she's had enough. Another muttering as she sews a button. They expect us to smile, work double shifts, and still deduct our laundry money. Not tonight. Before long, the whisper grows into a chorus, a mutiny with lipstick and petticoats, gathering strength every time someone counts her pay and finds it suspiciously light. Suddenly there's a meeting in the parlor, not for clients, but for grievances. Someone slams down a tally sheet. Someone else brings a list of complaints, scrawled on the back of a menu. No more cold dinners. Fair pay for long hours. Decent mattresses and a lock on every door. And no more inspection fees, unless the inspector's cute. The madam listens, arms folded, eyebrow raised. She's seen it before, knows when a threat is real and when it's just steam. But this time, it's real. You can hear it in the voices. Tired, stubborn, and just a little bit hopeful. The strike begins at midnight. No one goes upstairs. No one flirts in the parlor. The piano goes silent. The usual parade of clients arrives to find the girls clustered on the steps, arms linked, faces set. Some hold homemade signs. No fare, no fun. Pay us or pour your own gin. Solidarity with stockings. The clients don't know what to do. Some try to argue, how hard can the job really be? Others slink away, hat in hand, muttering about the end of civilization. A few, secretly supportive, slip the girls a few coins for the cause before heading home to explain to their wives why they're back so early. It's not just the clients who are thrown off. The madam scrambles, calculating her losses by the hour, trying to negotiate. Promises are made, better food, new pillows, maybe even a week without special guests from City Hall. But the girls are organized. They've seen what happens when they back down. There are secret meetings, whispered passwords, and a picket schedule that runs like clockwork. Word spreads. The strike makes the papers, well, the ones brave enough to print it. Reformers are delighted. They claim their prayers have finally been answered, that vice has been vanquished by virtue. They send sandwiches and pamphlets, neither of which are especially filling. The city watches, half in shock, half in awe. No one expected the brothel to unionize. But here you are, a band of tired, determined women, demanding respect with every feather in your hat. The best part? The camaraderie. The kitchen becomes a war room. The parlor, a break room. Someone sneaks in a bottle of wine, and by candlelight you tell stories, sing songs, and rediscover your own names, separate from your stage names, your customer names, your work persona. For a few hours at least, you're not just the girls. You're workers, friends, revolutionaries with sore feet and high hopes. Eventually, a compromise is reached. The madam relents. Conditions improve a little. Maybe there's a new mattress, an extra day off, or the promise of hot meals when the weather turns cold. The strike ends with hugs, laughter, and a feeling that just maybe you've changed something. Maybe not the world, but your corner of it. And when the parlor fills up again, when the piano starts to play and the men return, sheepish, relieved, pretending they barely noticed, you know one thing for sure. Nothing scares a brothel more than a roomful of women who decide, together, not to work, not for free, not for less, not tonight. You'd be amazed how many manicure parlors and dancing academies are actually thinly veiled invitations to negotiate. You flip through the city's most respectable daily paper, the one with thick pages, elegant fonts, and a firm stance on family values. At first, it's all advertisements for patent medicines and grand pianos, but hidden in the small print of the classifieds is a secret map of the city's vices. Refined young ladies sought for parlor work, experienced hostesses for entertainment house, private dancing lessons available, discretion assured. To the untrained eye, it's innocent enough. But to you and everyone else in the know, these are not job offers, they're invitations, written in the secret language of survival. It's an open secret. The editors pretend they don't notice. The reformers clutch their pearls but rarely read the fine print. And the city's gentlemen know exactly which millinery is always hiring and why there's a sudden surge in manicure specialists every Saturday night. Some ads are bolder than others. Evening companionship, pleasant surroundings, call for details. That pleasant surroundings is code for velvet curtains, soft lighting, and absolutely no embroidery happening past midnight. You get your first job this way. Someone passes you a copy of the Sunday edition, circles an ad that reads, "Young ladies wanted for light work, generous pay, must be outgoing." You answer with a nervous knock and a borrowed dress, only to find yourself in a parlor full of perfume, laughter, and a madam with a ledger fatter than a preacher's Bible. The coded ads aren't just for workers, either. Clients scan the paper with equal care, memorizing phone numbers and addresses scribbled in elegant script. Some are looking for company, others for adventure. A few just want to prove to themselves that they can crack the code. It becomes a game, a citywide scavenger hunt where the prize is a night out of sight and out of the reach of Sunday morning sermons. Every now and then, a reformer will try to shut down the ads. They'll launch a letter-writing campaign, threaten boycotts, and demand the paper clean up its act. The editors respond with a series of apologies and stricter guidelines, which mostly result in cleverer ads and an uptick in floral arrangement classes being offered by women with a suspicious lack of actual flowers. Sometimes the city cracks down for real, a burst of sudden morality that sweeps through, shutting down every massage studio and private instruction in sight. But it never lasts. New businesses pop up overnight with new names, new codes: cultural hostess, social entertainer, tea room attendant, hours flexible. The more the law chases, the cleverer the ads become. It's an arms race fought in italics and abbreviations. Everyone is complicit in their own way. The print boys delivering the paper know which houses tip best for prompt service. The typesetters get a little extra for making sure an ad is placed exactly right. Even the city's matriarchs sometimes scan the ads, not for themselves, of course not, but just to keep an eye on things, or so they say. You learn to read between the lines, to spot which ads are genuine, which ones are traps, and which are desperate attempts by someone new to the city just trying to survive. In a world where respectability is a currency and secrets are a kind of protection, the classified section is both a lifeline and a labyrinth. And so, every day, the city wakes up to its paper and its illusions. Respectable men sip coffee and circle numbers. Respectable women avert their eyes. The brothels fill up, the parlors hum, and somewhere, an editor nods to himself, knowing that as long as there are secrets to keep, there will always be space in the paper, right between the help-wanted ads and the piano lessons, for a little coded invitation to the city's oldest dance. Some girls had pen pals, others had regulars from out of town. Nothing says romance like a man arriving by train with a suitcase full of soap samples and expectations. You get used to seeing strangers in the parlor, men with sunburned faces, shiny new boots, and eyes that dart from the chandelier to the piano, as if trying to memorize every detail before heading back to wherever home is. The traveling salesman is a special breed. He arrives with an energy that's equal parts nervousness and hope, clutching a battered case that contains the entire history of American entrepreneurship in miniature. Buttons, combs, fountain pens, miracle tonics, all packed beside a crisp necktie and a stack of polite letters sent months in advance. Pen pals are the quiet heartbeats of the brothel world. Somewhere between the whiskey-soaked laughter and the hustle of nightly business, there's a steady trickle of correspondence, letters penned on hotel stationery or postmarked from dusty towns out west. Some begin with a business transaction and end as friendships, or something close. There's comfort in words, in the slow exchange of stories and careful confidences. A girl might wait weeks for a letter, tuck it inside her corset for luck, and reread it on lonely nights when the house is too loud and no one is listening. For some girls, a traveling salesman is a break in the routine, a breath of fresh air, a story from the road, a taste of a life that moves instead of sitting still. He comes bearing news from Chicago, or Omaha, or Boise, spinning tales about train delays, cranky porters, and the one time he met a mayor in a poker game. He'll compliment your dress, offer you a sample for special customers only, and ask about the city as if you're the real local authority. Sometimes you are. The relationship is transactional, but not always cold. Many a regular becomes a familiar face, a twice-yearly visitor who knows your favorite candy, remembers your birthday, and tips a little extra if business has been slow. He'll bring gifts, a silk handkerchief, a tin of English biscuits, a novelty postcard from a place you'll never visit. For a few hours, you're a cherished confidant, and he's a man who isn't just selling things, he's buying a story, a piece of comfort, a momentary escape from the grind of the rails. The arrival of the mail is an event in itself. The housekeeper sorts the pile, calls out names, and girls scramble for letters like schoolchildren after candy. A letter from a favorite regular is read and reread, shared with a trusted friend, or kept secret as a kind of private currency. Sometimes the letters are love poems, bad ones. Sometimes money orders, very welcome, and sometimes just rambling tales of the road. Today I saw a horse in Kansas that looked like it wanted to join the circus. Reminded me of you. But the truth of mail-order romance is, as always, complicated. Some men get ideas. They imagine a future, a promise, a love story where the train stops for good. Some girls get swept up, too, spinning dreams of boarding a sleeper car to San Francisco or New York, leaving the brothel behind. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. Hearts are broken quietly. In the silence of a Sunday morning, with a letter torn in half and slipped into the fire. And when the train whistles out of town, you're left with the souvenirs, a comb, a story, a memory of a man who promised he'd write, and sometimes even did. You smooth your dress, tuck the letter away, and return to the parlor. Because tomorrow, a new suitcase will roll in, full of samples and expectations, and the mail will bring a little hope, folded into paper, sealed with longing, and smelling faintly of soap. When the vice squad shows up with a minister in tow, it's not about justice, it's about making a show. Bonus points if someone faints dramatically on the steps. You hear the commotion before you see it. The distant clang of the church bell, the squeak of polished shoes, and the rumbling approach of a police wagon, all converging on the quiet Sunday morning like a badly cast parade. The brothel girls know the routine. There's a whispered warning, a rush to tidy up, and the madam barking, "Remember, tears earn sympathy, but fainting gets you out of statements." By now you're practically professionals. The raid always comes at the most inconvenient time, when the kitchen is half full of coffee cups, the piano player is testing out a new tune, and someone's halfway through her second helping of yesterday's pie. The front door bursts open, and in come the vice squad, huffing with the self-importance of men whose only exercise is running upstairs to arrest people sitting down. But this time, they're not alone. Behind them comes the local minister, clutching his Bible and wearing the grim expression of a man about to rescue souls, or at least make the headlines. It's all about the spectacle. The squad fans out, the minister sighs and shakes his head, and someone's aunt in the crowd starts weeping noisily. You're not sure if she's for or against, but she's definitely making it about her. The girls gather on the steps, looking suitably scandalized. The madam stands her ground, one eyebrow raised, mouth set in a line that says, "Try it, I dare you. You learn fast." Looking both virtuous and victimized at the same time. gets you the least trouble. There are speeches, always speeches. The minister intones about sin, repentance, and the dangers of immodest company. The vice squad lists the charges, which mostly sound like a summary of the week's gossip. Someone reads from the Bible, but stumbles over the difficult parts. The newspaper men scribble furiously, searching for quotes dramatic enough for tomorrow's front page. It's a circus, and everyone's selling tickets. Meanwhile, out on the street, a crowd gathers. Respectable ladies clutch their pearls and whisper to each other. Children giggle behind their hands. Local boys snicker from the alley, laying bets on who will cry first. It's part morality play, part afternoon matinee. The madam, always the consummate performer, feigns shock. One of the girls, let's call her Violet, collapses delicately on the bottom step, fanning herself like she's starring in a travelling production of Hamlet. An elderly neighbour claims she's never seen such depravity, despite having front-row seats every time the scene plays out. The raid itself is more ritual than risk. The officers collect their evidence, usually a bottle of gin and a stack of calling cards, and lead a few girls away for questioning. The rest are given a stern warning and a suggestion to seek honest work. By sunset, everyone's back home, and the churchmen head off to supper, congratulating themselves on saving the city for another week. Back inside, the house recovers with laughter. The piano starts up again. Someone recounts the best fainting performance. The girls trade gossip about which officer tried not to make eye contact. And the madam tallies up the day's expenses. It's business as usual, just with a bit more flair and a few extra handkerchiefs. But beneath the spectacle, you sense the tired routine, the city's need to pretend, the church's desire for headlines, and your own determination to get through it all with dignity and maybe a little dramatic flair. Because in this world, justice is a performance, the audience never leaves, and every brothel girl deserves a standing ovation, if only for making it through another Sunday show. The brothel isn't just business. Sometimes it's personal, and sometimes it's messy. Especially when two women fall for the same bootlegger. You might think a brothel is a finely tuned machine. Work schedules, strict rules, and a boss who keeps her emotions locked away with the gin money. But peel back the velvet curtain, and it's a soap opera set to ragtime, equal parts friendship, rivalry, and the kind of chaos only possible when everyone is a little bit tired and a little bit in love with someone they shouldn't be. Love sneaks in quietly. Maybe it's the bootlegger with the roguish grin, a coat that smells of trouble, and enough smooth talk to charm the feathers off the madam's favourite hat. He promises easy money, sweet nothings, and a steady supply of the good stuff. He tips generously and never misses a chance to wink at the prettiest girl, or the girl standing closest to the bar. It's harmless at first. Flirting is part of the job, but soon the late-night conversations by the kitchen stove turn real. Confessions exchanged over cold stew, eyes lingering too long in the hallway. That's when things get complicated, because if love is rare, jealousy is a permanent resident. It comes out in sharp words over breakfast, icy looks during shift changes, or a mysterious missing hairbrush that suddenly turns up with half the bristles pulled out. When two women set their sights on the same man, especially one as exciting and unreliable as a bootlegger, there are going to be fireworks, and not the fun kind. Fights in the brothel aren't all shouting and slapstick. Sometimes they're silent wars, cold shoulders, and cutting remarks. Sometimes it's sabotage, a dress hemmed too short, a shoe mysteriously borrowed, or a letter gone missing from a drawer. But now and then, tempers flare, and someone grabs a kitchen knife, all bluster and bravado, waving it more for emphasis than intent. The madam is an expert at diffusing these moments. One raised eyebrow, one word. Ladies, and the fight fizzles, replaced by laughter and shame, apologies mumbled over shared cigarettes in the back alley. Still, love and rivalry don't just disappear. You see it in the little acts of kindness, one girl sneaking another a piece of chocolate, a stolen moment of laughter after the parlor empties. But underneath is always the knowledge that the line between friend and competitor can be thin as lace. Jealousy, in a house like this, is never entirely about men. Sometimes it's about who gets the best room, who the madam favors, who earns the most or gets the night off. Love just makes it more poetic. Sometimes, of course, the bootlegger moves on, finds a new city, a new sweetheart, or, occasionally, gets caught by the law. Hearts break quietly. The girls who once fought over him end up sitting side by side on the porch, nursing drinks and grievances, forgiving each other because, in the end, the world is hard enough without holding grudges, and sometimes, just sometimes, love works out. Someone leaves with her sweetheart, starts over somewhere the streets don't know her name, and writes back with stories of happiness, or at the very least, less drama. The rest of you celebrate with a makeshift party and wish her well, even as you miss her laughter echoing through the hallway. In the end, life in the brothel is never just business. It's alliances, heartbreaks, jealousies, and forgivenesses, played out night after night under gaslight and piano music. Knife fights are rare, but drama is as common as dust on the chandelier. You learn to take the rough with the sweet, and maybe hide the good silver, just in case. Brothel shut down? No problem. Move 5 blocks down, change the curtains, rename the place the Moonlight Club, and pretend it's a jazz venue. In the red light district, permanence is a fairy tale. Laws change, reformers march, and suddenly the city is cracking down on vice. The neighbors get nervous, the newspapers thunder, and the vice squad comes around to nail a notice to your door. You have 48 hours to clear out, and you're supposed to be devastated. But if you've lasted more than a month in this business, you already know the secret. Survival means being nimble, and reinvention is just another part of the job. You pack up fast, because you have to. It's not just your dresses and rouge, it's ledgers, velvet drapes, candlesticks, and the good piano, the one with only 2 sticky keys. The girls form a line, and everything that isn't nailed down vanishes into trunks, boxes, and borrowed carts. The housekeeper ferries bedding through back alleys. The cook insists on bringing her favorite pot. The bouncer, whose real name nobody remembers, quietly relocates his chair and his collection of decorative blackjacks. 5 blocks is a long way when you're carrying your life in a suitcase. Still, you all do it in heels, by moonlight, ducking through alleyways, while trying to look like you're just a particularly energetic moving crew. It's a production, equal parts comedy, tragedy, and logistical miracle. The neighbors pretend not to watch from behind lace curtains, but you know they'll be ringing your bell again by next Friday. The new place is always a step up or a step sideways, an old boarding house, a disused bakery, a grand mansion gone to seed. The madam walks through, eyes sharp, making mental notes. Where will the parlor go? Which room gets the velvet chaise? How fast can the liquor arrive? And which neighbor needs a bottle to welcome you to the block? Within a day, the curtains are hung, the bed's made, and the new sign goes up. Something musical, something innocent. The Moonlight Club, the Blue Parlor, Miss Maybell's Dancing Academy. The business doesn't change. The faces don't change. The regulars find you, slipping through the side door with the same old stories, leaving their guilt at the curb with their hat and umbrella. The piano starts up, the laughter flows, and soon the new address feels just like home. Only the madam knows how close you all came to losing everything. And only she remembers which officials need to be thanked for their understanding. Every move is a risk. Sometimes you lose a girl who decides to take her chances in another city, or a client who can't remember the new password. You gain a new housekeeper, a new neighbor who brings fresh bread, or a jazz trio who play for tips and a warm meal. The district breathes and shifts, but the show goes on. There's a kind of pride in how quickly you adapt. The old curtains get turned into new cushion covers. The last of the gin finds its way into the punch bowl for a soft opening night. The regulars pretend it's a grand debut, but everyone knows you've been here all along, just with a new name and a slightly wobblier staircase. And so, when closing time comes again, you're ready. You pack, you move, you reinvent. The city can pass new laws and send in the reformers. But as long as there are women who know how to survive, there will always be a moonlight club somewhere, just waiting for the music to start. Because in the world's oldest profession, every ending is just another opening night, and a little reinvention is the price you pay for never, ever letting them see you sweat. Some of these madams ended up wealthier than the mayors who tried to shut them down. Others became social reformers. A few just vanished, like smoke from a cigarette in a scandalous photograph. Behind every velvet curtain, there's a woman with a ledger, a plan, and a spine that could hold up a church steeple. The madams of the early 1900s were business moguls, politicians without a ballot, community leaders without a pulpit. They ran their houses with a level of strategy and ambition that would make a Wall Street banker sweat. If you wanted to know who really kept the city humming, you didn't look at City Hall. You looked for the woman with the best jewelry and the worst temper in the district. For many, their journey started on the other side of the curtain. A few tough years working the cribs, a knack for negotiation, and a talent for keeping the peace when tempers flared. Slowly they rose through the ranks, managing payroll, negotiating with suppliers, and learning how to keep the vice squad on a tight leash. By the time they made madam, they knew every secret in the district and every man worth knowing or worth blackmailing, if it came to that. Success could mean a life of luxury. Some madams bought real estate, owned racehorses, or invested in the newfangled automobile craze. They attended charity balls, sent their girls to the best doctors, and donated to local orphanages. Sometimes anonymously, sometimes not. More than one mayor found himself quietly grateful that the district's problem was run with so much efficiency and so little scandal. When a madam wanted a new law blocked or a raid postponed, she made a few phone calls, handed out some discreet envelopes, and the city's moral panic conveniently moved to the next block. But power came at a cost. Every day was a negotiation, keeping the peace among girls who were tired, scared, or just plain stubborn, outwitting police who alternated between helpful and hostile, and dodging the relentless gaze of reformers who wanted to save souls, or at least make headlines. The madam had to be mother, banker, therapist, and warden, all while maintaining the delicate balance that kept the house afloat. Some madams, having outgrown the business or grown weary of the grind, turned their talents to social reform. They used their wealth and connections to found homes for fallen women, finance literacy classes, or campaign for suffrage. They'd seen firsthand what poverty and prejudice could do, and some wanted to make sure the next generation had more choices and fewer cages. And then there were the mysteries. The madam who vanished the night before a big raid, leaving only a note and a stash of gold coins. The one who married a banker and moved west, reinventing herself as a widow of independent means. Or the woman who changed her name, her hair, and her accent so many times that even she couldn't remember which story was true. What tied them together was resilience. In a world eager to judge and slow to forgive, these women carved out power from scraps, dignity from chaos, and safety from danger. They looked out for their own. A girl in trouble always found a place, alone, or a stern lecture paired with a hot meal. Their legacies were complicated, a mix of scandal and service, luxury and loneliness, daring and heartbreak. History rarely celebrates these women. Their stories live on in rumors, in property deeds hidden under maiden names, in the whispered tales told by girls who made it out, or made it through. But if you listen closely, you can still hear them laughing in the background, outsmarting the odds, and running the show long after the curtains fell. Because in the end, the women who ran it all proved that power isn't always about the right address or the right name. Sometimes, it's just about knowing how to keep the lights on, the doors open, and the whole wild world turning, one quiet, unstoppable decision at a time. As the 1910s rolled on, laws tightened, raids increased, and the golden age of brothel culture started to fade. But not before one last scandal involving a senator, a corset, and a very talkative parrot. The winds of reform are blowing, and they don't care about tradition, velvet curtains, or even the best pie in the district. Suddenly, city councils who once turned a blind eye to disorderly houses discover the phrase zero tolerance. New police chiefs make their name with grand promises and even grander gestures. There are headlines, always headlines, warning of moral decay, urging the cleaning up of the city, and featuring stern photographs of men with mutton chops and ambitions. Brothels that once operated in plain sight now find their windows shuttered and doors padlocked, sometimes in the middle of dinner service. The madam, ever the realist, calls a meeting in the parlour and lays out the news. Ladies, the city's got religion, and they want us gone. Some of the girls cry. Others shrug and start packing. The bouncer sighs and asks if he can finally retire to his cousin's farm. And yet, as every performer knows, the show's not really over until the final curtain falls. And this era insists on going out with style. Enter the senator. Dashing, dignified, and just a bit too fond of the parlour's homemade cherry cordial. His favourite girl is clever, his reputation fragile, and his alibi non-existent. On the night in question, there's a party, jazz on the piano, bootleg champagne flowing, and a general air of denial in the face of city-wide crackdowns. That's when it happens. A police raid, clumsy and determined, barrels through the front door. In the chaos, someone, accounts differ, but it may have been the madam herself, shoves the senator into the coat closet with nothing but a silk corset for modesty and strict instructions not to sneeze. Unfortunately, the closet is already occupied by the parrot, the very talkative parrot who has heard one too many secrets and isn't shy about repeating them. Downstairs, the officers are interviewing guests, the madam is feigning outrage, and the senator is in the closet, praying the bird keeps quiet. No such luck? In a clear, cheerful voice, the parrot pipes up with a perfect imitation of the senator's pet phrase, "Don't tell my wife," followed by a rendition of the campaign jingle he thought everyone had forgotten. By the time the officers open the closet, the parrot is on the senator's shoulder, both looking equally guilty. The story spreads like wildfire. The newspapers have a field day. Senator caught with corset and confidant. Parrot spills political secrets. House of ill repute shuts its doors. Opens can of worms. The reformers cheer. The mayor frowns into his coffee. The parrot becomes a local legend. But beneath the laughter, the end is real. With every new law, every raid, and every front-page scandal, another brothel closes. Some girls scatter to other towns, chasing hope or just running from memory. Others settle into new, quieter lives. Housekeepers, waitresses, retired entertainers. The madam sells what she can, keeps what she must, and disappears with enough saved to start over somewhere no one knows her name. The district grows silent. The music fades. The city pats itself on the back, Sure, it's finally clean, but in quiet corners, people still whisper about the old days, about love, money, survival, and the parrot who ruined a senator. They remember that behind every scandal was a story, behind every law a life. And as the world changes, you hold on to the memory of that last night. The music echoing in empty halls, and the knowledge that every ending is just a new story waiting to be told. Even if, sometimes, the hero is a parrot with perfect timing, you're standing behind a curtain, or maybe a screen, or maybe just pretending to dust something coquettishly, while a man in a bowler hat evaluates you like a steak at a questionable butcher shop. Lineups were the standard, polite, formal, and just a little bit degrading. Clients were expected to choose their lady of the evening with the same solemnity used to pick a church pew or a hat on sale. If he hesitated, the madam might give him a nudge. Try number 3. She's conversational. Number 3, by the way, hasn't slept in 36 hours and once punched a city councilman for tipping in nickels. There's a particular choreography to a brothel lineup. The girls line up in their finest, dresses pressed, hair fixed, faces carefully composed to look friendly but not too eager, mysterious but not bored. It's a parade of possibility, with just a hint of pageant and a lot of silent judgment. The client, often clutching his hat and dignity like a lifeboat, tries to look decisive while avoiding direct eye contact. He'll study shoes, examine gloves, and occasionally peer at someone's earring, as if searching for clues about her moral fiber. The room itself is heavy with anticipation, and the scent of perfume, sometimes roses, sometimes cheap cologne, sometimes whatever the housekeeper sprayed 10 minutes before opening. If you're lucky, you're near the end of the line, giving you a few extra moments to adjust your smile, fix a stray hair, and whisper encouragement to the girl beside you. Don't let him pick you if he smells like onions, she'll mutter. Sound advice. The madam oversees the whole production, perched on her velvet chair like a game show host with a stack of trivia cards. She knows which girl is due for a rest day, who's behind on rent, and which clients have a reputation for tipping, or not. If the client waffles, the madam intervenes with all the tact of a cattle auctioneer. Miss Violet plays the piano. Miss Ruby speaks French. Miss Mabel is an excellent listener. You pray the client picks fast so you can get back to the parlor, where the tea is tepid but at least no one's judging your shoes. Sometimes the lineup feels almost absurd. There you are, graded like fruit at the market, each of you hiding a story behind powdered cheeks and careful posture. You stand a little taller, laugh at the right moment, and pretend you don't notice when the client's hands shake or his eyes linger a beat too long. If he makes a joke, you all chuckle politely, even if it's about as funny as a trip to the dentist. The moment is brief, but it feels endless. There are little rituals. A girl in the lineup might squeeze your hand for luck, or gently nudge you forward if you're drifting into daydreams. Some girls use the opportunity to practice their charm, flashing a practiced smile or tossing a coy remark. Others take a quieter approach, gazing at the floor with an air of weary dignity. The regulars, those men who come every Thursday or payday, make their pick with practiced nonchalance. Newcomers sometimes need gentle herding from the madam, or a helpful suggestion if they freeze under the gaze of 10 hopeful women. But for all its ceremony, the lineup is also survival. If you're picked first, it's good luck, or so everyone says. If you're not picked at all, you try not to let it show. You joke later about being too mysterious, or saving your talents for better company. Behind the scenes, you comfort the ones left behind, sharing a cigarette, a laugh, or a whispered plan for next time. And so the lineup continues, night after night, a pageant, a ritual, a roll of the dice. Sometimes it leads to a pleasant evening. Sometimes to a story you'll never repeat, and always to the knowledge that, in this business, you're never just a face in the crowd. You're number 3. Number 7, the conversational one, or the girl who once punched a councilman, and in the lineup, everyone is someone, if only for a moment. Yes, there's a menu. No, it doesn't involve food, unless you count the tepid oysters served in the parlor to impress out-of-towners who still think the word bordello is French for hotel. Some of the fancier houses offered evening packages, with tiered pricing like a turn-of-the-century theme park, but stickier. You could get a drink, a dance, and a discreet cuddle for $3, or drop $10 for champagne, 2 hours of company, and a polite promise not to mention it to your wife. Everything had a price, except actual love that was extra. The brothel menu is a masterpiece of coded language and ambitious upselling. It sits discreetly on the polished mahogany table, wedged between the latest issue of the local gazette and a dish of lemon-scented hand wipes. There's always a list of refreshments: sparkling wine, punch, special tonic, each one marked up threefold from what you'd pay at the bar next door. Order a bottle of house champagne, and the madam will present it with a wink, a flourish, and the kind of glassware that makes you wonder how many lips have told secrets over the rim. Then there's the food, if you can call it that. Oysters on ice, sandwiches with the crusts cut off, slices of cake that defy the basic laws of chemistry. Out-of-towners marvel at the abundance. Locals know better than to ask for seconds. You learn to smile when the new client asks, "Are the oysters fresh?" Because the answer is always, "As fresh as they need to be, darling." The housekeeper keeps a pot of weak tea and a tin of biscuits behind the scenes for when the real hunger sets in. But the main event is experience, not calories. The menu offers everything from a quick waltz in the parlor to a grand evening package, 2 dances, private conversation, and the pleasure of your company behind a velvet curtain. The prices climb with every minute and every tier of intimacy. For a little extra, the girl of your choice might sing a song, recite poetry, or even pretend to care about the outcome of the mayoral election. Optional conversation, as listed, is the house's biggest seller. Some men pay for talk and nothing else. Stories about distant cities, philosophical musings, tales of heartbreak delivered over ginger ale and sighs. Others want to talk about their own lives, detailing business failures and romantic woes, grateful for a sympathetic ear that doesn't interrupt except to refill a glass. You learn quickly that listening is often worth more than dancing, and far more than whatever the kitchen is passing off as canapés. Of course, everything has a secret surcharge. Want to keep the piano player going past midnight? That's an extra $1 in the tip jar. Want the private booth by the window? A little extra on the bill, slipped quietly to the madam. And if you want absolute discretion, well, that costs the most of all. The madam is a shrewd negotiator, sliding the bill across the table with the same poise she uses to handle the vice squad and the city taxman. You, as one of the hostesses, become a menu item. A line between tea and sympathy, and a night you'll never forget. Sometimes you wonder how you're listed. Witty conversation, moderate dancing skills, excellent listener, will laugh at your jokes for free. Other times, you're just glad your worth is measured in dollars and not oysters. Love, of course, isn't on the menu. Not really. There are always those who look for it, scanning the room for someone to save or be saved by. But the price is never listed, the guarantee never printed. The smart ones take their champagne, their dance, their story, and go home with nothing more than a receipt and maybe a lipstick stain on a napkin. And so the menu changes with the season, the house, the clientele. The prices go up, the offerings grow more inventive, but the real business stays the same. Selling escape, 1 hour at a time, with optional conversation and the best bad oysters in town. You're walking home in the morning, hair slightly wild, lipstick smudged like a fading memory. And there she is, Mrs. Langley, your neighbor, watching from her front porch like a hawk wrapped in lace. She doesn't speak, but her teacup trembles judgment. This is the quiet war of the 1900s. The respectable wives who pretend brothels don't exist, while their husbands make weekly business visits. You might be seen as scandalous, but you're also paying more rent than half the neighborhood. And, honestly, your curtains are nicer. The line between respectability and scandal is razor thin, and everyone pretends not to notice which side they're standing on. The wives gather for tea and discuss recipes, church socials, and the latest hat styles, while the girls from the brothel drift past on their way to the market, earning side glances and whispered gossip that clings to their skirts like static. You know what they say, she's one of those girls, upstairs at the boarding house, as if flaws could define virtue. You learn to hold your head high, walking the same streets as the wives who won't meet your eyes. It's a dance of denial. They set out petunias in the front garden, and you set out for groceries, both tending your patch of ground and hoping the neighbor's secrets stay buried deeper than yours. The air is thick with unspoken rules. You avoid the bakery at 9, because that's when Mrs. Langley collects her bread and would rather not be reminded of your existence. You never go to church bazaars, but you do know which grocer will let you in the side door for a little extra on your tab. The wives pretend not to see the parade of men on payday nights, hats pulled low, slipping into the side entrance of your building. They don't mention when a familiar coat is missing from the church pew on Sunday morning. In return, you don't mention the bottles of tonic delivered discreetly to their doorsteps or the regular bouquets sent anonymously every Tuesday. It's a polite arrangement. Mutually assured discretion. There's resentment, but there's envy too. You dress well, you tip generously, and your laughter carries through the open window, freer, sometimes, than the wives' careful smiles. You pay in cash, no haggling or credit, which means the landlord is happier with you than half his tenants. When repairs are needed, your call gets answered first. Mrs. Powers, Langley's husband, may sit on the building committee, but everyone knows whose rent keeps the roof fixed. Sometimes, late at night, the line blurs further. A wife knocks quietly, face shrouded in a scarf, and asks if you know where she can buy decent stockings for less. You show her the trick, turning last week's run into this week's ribbon, and she thanks you in a whisper, vanishing before the neighbors can see. Another time, one of the wives asks for advice about a delicate matter. You give her honest answers, because experience is currency, and kindness, even unspoken, makes the neighborhood safer for everyone. But the truce is never total. At the next church picnic, a new rumor starts, and your laundry is mentioned by name. Someone leaves a pamphlet on your doorstep, full of prayers for redemption and warnings about eternal fire. You laugh, fold it neatly, and use it to steady a wobbly table leg. Redemption is nice, but you prefer furniture that doesn't shake. And so, the dance continues. The girls upstairs, the wives down the block, each playing their part in the city's great game of pretense. You keep your secrets, your dignity, and your rent receipts. They keep their teacups, their gardens, and their silence. In the end, the city is big enough for everyone's stories, even if only some are told out loud. And, for what it's worth, your curtains really are the nicest on the block. The brothel doesn't run on charm alone. It runs on bribes. Monthly, weekly, sometimes hourly, depending on how nosy the new city clerk is. You slip cash to the patrolman, cigars to the alderman, and occasionally you let the mayor's cousin borrow your parlor for a private reading group. It's all about keeping appearances and pockets well greased. Every scandal is just one unpaid envelope away. And when the church ladies protest, the police mysteriously stop showing up for raids until after the mayor's birthday party. Running a brothel in the early 1900s is less about velvet and winks than it is about paperwork and diplomacy. The madam knows this better than anyone. She keeps a ledger, not just for the girls' earnings or the cost of candles, but for who gets what, when, and why. In the columns: police chief, cash, monthly; alderman, cigars, quarterly; city clerk, theatre tickets, when he's feeling neglected; and, of course, the mayor's nephew, who keeps losing his hat during those suspiciously literary reading sessions. It's a game of constant negotiation. There's always a palm waiting to be greased and a favour waiting to be called in. You pay the patrolman to keep your address off his official route, the fire chief to ignore the fact that your parlour lamps are one curtain too close to the drapes, and the postman to make sure certain letters never get delivered to certain addresses. No one admits it, but everyone expects it. In a city built on pretense, a little cash is the best oil for the machinery of morality. Every so often, the winds shift, a new mayor, a new chief, or a visiting crusader eager for headlines. Suddenly, the price of protection goes up. The madam calls the girls in, reminds everyone to be extra careful, and doubles the kitchen budget for special guests. The liquor supplier arrives with twice the usual shipment and a subtle warning. Big meeting at City Hall next week, ma'am. Might want to freshen the curtains. Code 4. Get your envelopes ready. Scandals, when they happen, aren't about what you did, but about who didn't get paid. A missed envelope here, a forgotten cigar there, and suddenly your front door is the epicenter of a moral crisis. Headlines blare about the den of sin, sermons thunder, and reformers wave banners in front of your steps. But you know the drill. A discreet conversation, a little extra in the right pocket, and the storm passes. The next week, it's as if nothing happened, except for the price hike on bribes and a few new faces in the guest book. And always, there's the mayor's nephew, lounging in the parlour with a poetry book he never actually reads. The private reading group is code for a lot of things, none of them literary. The girls roll their eyes but play along. The madam smiles, serves coffee, and makes sure the cousin's hat and the mayor's favour never go missing. Meanwhile, the church ladies do their rounds, staging protests outside your gate and praying loudly for your salvation. The madam makes a show of listening, nodding solemnly, and even sending tea and scones to the picket line. The police, ever diplomatic, avoid your street entirely during these episodes, at least until after the mayor's birthday party, when suddenly they remember your address and stop by for a friendly inspection. It's a delicate dance, part bribery, part charity, part theatre. You survive by keeping everyone just happy enough, just rich enough, and just distracted enough not to ask too many questions. The madam is a master of this. Always paying on time, always 2 steps ahead, and never letting a scandal get in the way of business for long. Because in this world, morality is negotiable and reputation is just another line in the budget. You pay your dues, mind your ledgers, and make sure the mayor's nephew always leaves with a smile. After all, in a city like this, it's not what you know, it's who gets their envelope on time. No one tells you how to retire from this job. There's no pension plan, no farewell luncheon, no commemorative plaque that says, "Thanks for the resilience and emotional labor." Some women marry clients. Some vanish to Kansas with a new name and a suitcase full of silk robes. A few open boarding houses or become dressmakers, which everyone knows is code. But we all pretend. And others? They stay until the city bulldozes the building and builds a parking lot over what used to be your bedroom. Congratulations. You're history now, just without the plaque. Retirement, in the brothel world, is a concept as slippery as a politician's promise. You watch the older girls and wonder, how will you know when it's time to go? It isn't age that tells you, It's something quieter, a weariness that settles in your bones, a night when the laughter in the parlor feels too loud, or the realization that your favorite client is now someone's grandfather. There's no send-off, no golden handshake, just a slow fading into the background, replaced by younger faces with fresh stories and stronger knees. Some try for the storybook ending, marry a client, start over somewhere your past can't follow. The odds aren't great, but occasionally it works. The rest of the girls throw a party, cake, cheap champagne, bittersweet jokes about going straight. She leaves with best wishes, maybe a wad of bills tucked in her glove, and the hope that this time it sticks. A year later, a postcard arrives from Omaha or Tulsa or Topeka, usually signed with a new last name and the promise of happiness. You hope it's true. More often the exit is quieter. A suitcase disappears from under a bed. A familiar perfume lingers in the hallway, and a girl you've known for years is suddenly on a visit to her sister, or taking a job out west. The madam nods, says nothing, and quietly marks the room as vacant. Later, you hear she's opened a boarding house, or found work as a companion to a wealthy widow. Everyone knows the code. No one asks too many questions. Some women become businesswomen in their own right, investing in properties, running boarding houses, or setting up as dressmakers or seamstresses. If anyone wonders why the seamstress never sews anything, or why her clients are always men in new suits, they're polite enough not to ask. These are the lucky ones. Savvy, organized, and able to navigate a world where your past is always just a rumor away. But not everyone gets out on their own terms. For some, the job lasts until the world moves on without them. They stay in the house as the crowds thin, the city grows, and reformers finally get their way. The girls dwindle, the madam retires or disappears, and one day the landlord arrives with an eviction notice. Your bedroom becomes a pile of bricks, your parlor a muddy lot, and your old haunts a row of parked cars. History moves forward, and you become part of the city's forgotten architecture. You wonder sometimes what your legacy will be. There are no plaques, no pensions, no framed photographs on the wall of City Hall. What you leave behind is quieter. The advice you gave, the laughter you shared, the secrets you kept for others. Maybe someone remembers your kindness, your wit, your recipe for bread pudding. Maybe a woman on the next block got her start because you helped her when no one else would. Retirement, for you, is about carving out a new identity, building something out of scraps, and learning to let go of a world that was never built to last. You fade, but not because you failed, because that's how the game works. And if, one day, someone parks on the spot where your bed once stood, you smile at the thought, history is everywhere, even if it doesn't come with a plaque. So tonight, as you lie back in your soft, clean bed, possibly wearing pajamas that weren't stitched together by a woman named Dot in a parlor full of secrets and cigarette smoke, take a moment to appreciate just how far we've come. You didn't have to bribe a constable to turn off your lights. You didn't have to smile at a senator while hiding laudanum in your garter. And most importantly, you didn't have to endure a shift in high heels, a corset, and a forced smile while some married man told you his wife just doesn't understand him. Lucky you. The world of regulated prostitution in early 20th century America wasn't glamorous. It was exhausting. It was risky. It was weirdly bureaucratic. And yet, it was also filled with sharp-witted women who ran businesses, formed sisterhoods, outmaneuvered hypocrites, and somehow found laughter in a life balanced on the edge of a double standard. They survived public raids, private shame, fake reformers, and real heartbreak. They endured everything from health inspections that were mostly just creepy to morality laws written by people who had clearly never tried to live on 50 cents and a lukewarm bottle of bathtub gin. And yet, through all of it, these women created spaces. spaces to exist, to earn, to eat, to rest, to breathe. They carved out lives in a society that wanted to erase them with a prayer and a pamphlet. And in doing so, they left behind a legacy that's complicated, resilient, and weirdly inspiring. So maybe tonight, whisper a quiet thank you to the women who wore too much rouge, laughed too loudly, hid ledgers in hat boxes, and reminded the world that survival isn't always pretty, but it is powerful. Because history might be messy, scandalous, and absolutely covered in cigarette ash, but it's also proof that people, especially the ones on the margins, are stubborn, clever, and surprisingly good at finding joy in the middle of a moral panic. Sleep well. You're safe. You're warm. And no one's coming to inspect your ankles. Not tonight. Good night.